Good morning, students. In today's session, we are going to take up the first chapter of your Class 8 literature book, that is, The Boy Who Broke the Bank. Now, it's written by Ruskin Bond, and we all know Ruskin Bond is a very famous Indian writer. Now, in this chapter, the writer wants to tell us about rumor, how rumor spreads. We all know what is rumor, fake news, and how it spreads. So, through the story, the writer tells us how a simple piece of information, just by the change of words, just by sort of misunderstanding and miscomprehension of that piece of information, how it changes the meaning and it turns into a big news and a big rumor and can lead to a big chaos in the whole city. So let us start with the reading of the chapter, and children, make sure before you start with this video you should have your book ready with you and you keep a pencil with in your hand, so that whenever I tell you some meanings you can underline those words and write them down in your book. So let us begin with the line by line explanation of the book, the chapter. Page 1 I'll start with. Nathu, the sweeper boy. So the main character of the story, whose name is Nathu, he is a sweeper boy. He's a boy. So the writer tells us two things about Nathu in these two words. We come to know that he's a boy, he's a grown-up boy, and he's a sweeper also, what he's working as. So look at the way of writing. So Nathu, the sweeper boy, grumbled to himself as he swept the steps of a small local bank owned by Saint Govindram, a man of wealth whose haphazard business dealings had often brought him to the verge of ruin. So Nathu, he was grumbling to himself. He was complaining to himself while he was sweeping the steps of the bank. And the name of the bank is Seth Govindram. The owner. This is a small local bank. Whose owner is Seth Govindram. And now the writer tells us about Seth Govindram that he is a man of wealth. He's a very rich man. But his business ways, they are very haphazard. Haphazard means unorganized. So he does the business in a very unorganized manner, in a very haphazard manner. And just because of this haphazard manner, many times these business manners, they had brought him to the verge of ruin. Verge of ruin means he was almost at the point of losing all his money. So Nathu used the small broom hurriedly. So Nathu, he was grumbling, he was very angry. So he was using his broom very hurriedly. He was doing his work very quickly and carelessly, maybe because he was very angry. The dust, after rising in a cloud above his head, settled down again on the step. So he was doing it so hurriedly, the dust was it was rising above his head in the form of a cloud, and then again it was settling down on the step. As he banged his pan loudly against a dustbin, Sitaram, the washerman's son, passed by. So when he was doing his work angrily, he was banging in anger, he was banging that pan against the dustbin. And just then what happened? Sitaram, his friend, who was the washerman's son, he passed by. He saw Nathu behaving in this manner and he stopped over. So we move on to the second paragraph now. Sitaram was on his delivery round. So he was delivering clothes to the people. He had a bundle of freshly pressed clothes balanced on his head. "Don't raise such dust," he called out to Nathu. So when he saw Nathu behaving in this manner, doing the work so carelessly, he told him, "So why are you raising such dust? Are you annoyed?" So he could easily make out that Nathu is annoyed. So he asked, "Are you angry because they are still refusing to pay you another 5 rupees a month?" And maybe he knew the reason, because maybe Nathu might have told earlier that he might have asked the people for a raise in his salary to increase his 5 rupees, but they might not have agreed. So he says, are you annoyed because they have still refusing to pay you another 5 rupees a month? So let us find out what Nathu has to say. So Nathu says, I don't want to talk about it, complained the sweeper boy. He was so angry. He says, I don't even want to talk about it. So he says, leave those 5 rupees. I haven't even received my regular pay. Soon 2 months pay will be due. So he says, I haven't even got my regular pay, and now it's going to be 2 months. Who would think this was a bank holding up a poor man's salary? And he says, when people will hear about this, that I have not got my salary, who would think that I'm working in a bank? A bank is supposed to be a place where all the money is, and this bank is not even able to pay a poor man's salary. So who would think that this is a bank? So as soon as I get my money, I am off. So he's so annoyed that he says, as soon as I will get my money, I am off. I'll leave this job. Not another week will I work in this place. And Nathu banged the pan against the dustbin several times. So look at his expression of anger. He's so angry. This is what we do when we are angry, no? We bang things around. So moving on to the 4th paragraph. Well, I wish you luck, said Sitaram, and I'll be on a lookout for a new job for you. So he says, I'm wishing you luck and I'll look for a new job for you. And he plodded barefoot along the road, the big bundle of clothes hiding most of his head and shoulders. And he started walking. He plodded barefoot. He was barefoot. He was not wearing any shoes or slippers. And, he was carrying a big bundle which almost covered his head and shoulders. So he was plodding. He was not able to walk properly. At the 4th home he visited, delivering the washing, Sitaram overheard the woman of the house saying how difficult it was to get someone to sweep the courtyard. So when he reached the 4th home to deliver the clothes, he heard the owner of the house women there. She was saying that she was looking for someone who could sweep the courtyard. Courtyard is the outer open area of the house. So tying his bundle, Sitaram said, so when he came to know this, so Sitaram knew he could talk about Nathu's job. So he said, I know of a sweeper boy who's looking for job. He might be able to work for you from next month. So he says that from next month he'll be able to work for you. He is with Seth Govindram's bank just now, but they aren't giving him his pay and he wants to leave. So he just mentions the reason. He says because he has not they are not giving him his pay, he's not got the pay, so he wants to leave the job. And oh, is that so? Said Mrs. Prakash. So name of this lady, she is Mrs. Prakash, and she's very inquisitive. She wants to ask more. And why aren't they paying him? So she asks him that why aren't they paying him? They must be short of money, said Sitaram with a shrug. So Sitaram, he just mentions, although he doesn't know the reason. So he just mentions with a shrug. Shrug means, a movement of the shoulders when you just want to convey that you're not bothered about something. So he just says it without thinking that maybe they are short of money. So this is how, this is from here the rumor starts. Nathu tells him, Sitaram, that maybe they are not giving, I have not got my pay. And from that got my pay, now Sitaram changes the words and he says they are not giving him. So there's a difference, no? He's not got and they are not giving. There's a lot of difference in this. So this is how the change of words can lead to a rumor. So he says maybe they are short of money, and he just ignorantly he mentions the reason also, although he doesn't know anything about it. Mrs. Prakash laughed, and she was laughing like anything. Well, tell him to come and see me when he's free. So she tells Sitaram to tell Nathu to come over when he is free. So we move on to the next page. Sitaram, glad that he had been of a help to both a customer and his friend, hoisted his bag on his shoulder and went on his way. So Sitaram was happy that he had helped his customer also and his friend also. Both were in need and he was able to provide them help. And he hoisted his bag on his shoulders. He's put up. Hoisted means he put up. And then he went on his way. So from here, the rumor starts. Soon after, Mrs. Prakash set out for the bazaar to make her usual afternoon tour of the cloth shops. So, maybe this is her routine. Mrs. Prakash, she goes out. She set out. Set out means she goes out to the bazaar to make her usual afternoon tour. Usual word here, it shows that maybe she's doing it very regularly. So in the afternoon she goes to tour the cloth shops. A large shady tamarind tree grew near the clock tower, and it was here that she found her friend Mrs. Bhushan sheltering from the heat. So there, under a tamarind tree, Mrs. Prakash, she found her friend Mrs. Bhushan, who was trying to take shelter from the heat. So we move on to paragraph 11 now. Do you know, my dear, Mrs. Prakash said, that Seth Govind Ram's bank can't even pay its employees. Now, another change of language here. Now, here she is making judgments that this bank, it is not even able to pay its employees. Only this morning, I heard a complaint from their sweeper boy who hasn't received his pay for 2 months. So she tells that today only I came to know that a sweeper boy who's working there in the bank, he has not received his pay for 2 months. It's disgraceful, exclaimed Mrs. Bhushan. So Mrs. Bhushan, she mentions that it's very bad, it's very disgraceful. If they can't pay the sweeper, they must be in a bad way. So another conclusion she makes is that if they are not even able to pay the sweeper, whose salary will be very, very minimum, then that means they must be in a very bad condition. None of the others can be getting paid either. So another conclusion she makes, she says maybe the others, although also working in the bank, might not be getting their salaries. So this is how the rumor is gradually, gaining. So Mrs. Bhushan left Mrs. Prakash at the tamarind tree and went in search of her husband. So she goes to find her husband to give this information to him, who was found sitting under the fan in Jugal Kishore's electrical goods shop. So she found that her husband was sitting in Jugal Kishore's electrical shop there, sitting under the fan, talking with the owner. So there are you, cried Mrs. Bhushan. I have been looking for you nearly an hour. I don't know what's happening to this town. And the moment she reaches there, she says, oh, so here are you. I've been looking for you for an hour, and what is happening to this town. Did you know? So, she built up a background before she gave this information. So, did you know that the bank is going bankrupt? And the next judgment she passed, that the bank has gone bankrupt. So, nowhere she got this information that the bank has gone bankrupt. It was just that piece of information which Nathu gave to Sitaram, that I have not got my salary. So that got my salary changed to paying, and that paying changed to so many other things. And now at last it has come to bankruptcy. What did you say? said Mr. Jugal Kishore, sitting up suddenly. Which bank? So the owner of the shop, he was startled. He was shocked. And he asks which bank, because everyone was concerned, because people had their money in the bank. Why, said Govind Ram's bank, of course. I hear they have stopped paying their employees. No salary for over 3 months. So see the change. From 2 months it has changed to 3 months. So this is how a rumor becomes a rumor. So she says that for the last 3 months they haven't paid the salary. Don't tell me you have an account with them, Mr. Kishore. And she, puts fire to it and she says, I hope you don't have any account there. No, but my neighbor has, he says. And he called out to the keeper of the barber shop next door. So he calls out, he says, my neighbor has the account there. And he calls him out. Faiz Hussain, have you heard the latest? Said Govind Ram Bank is about to collapse. So he informs that person that the bank is going to collapse, so you'd better take out your money while there's time. So he warns him. Now Faiz Hussain, he's the barber who was cutting the hair of an elderly gentleman, was so startled that his hand shook and he nicked his customer's right ear. He was so startled, he was so shocked to hear that news, that while he was cutting the hair of an elderly gentleman, he nicked his right ear, made a small cut there. The customer yelped with pain and distress, and the customer shouted like anything with pain and distress. Now the pain was out of that cut, and the distress, sadness, it was because of that awful news, the bad news, which he had just heard, with one side of his neck still unshorn. So he was only half done. One side of his neck was still left to be the hair to be cut. He leaped out of the chair. So he jumped out of the chair like anything when he heard this shocking news, and he sped across the road. He ran with speed across the road to a general store. He went to a general store where there was a telephone. So this story seems to be set in a long time back when the telephones were not very commonly present in every shop. That is why at one place the author mentions fan also. Otherwise fan is nothing something which needs to be mentioned. So he finds out a telephone and he dials Seth Govind Ram's number. The Seth was not at home. So he comes to know that the Seth was not at home. Where was he then? So he asks where was he, and he comes to know that the Seth was in Kashmir and he was holidaying there. He was enjoying his holiday. Oh, was that so? And he gets another shock. The elderly gentleman did not believe it, and he could not believe that if the bank is going through such a bad condition and is on the verge of bankruptcies, how could the owner of the bank go and enjoy a holiday? So he hurried back to the barber's shop. He came running back to his shop and told Faiz Hussain, the bird has flown. And he gave this news. And look at the words used here. He says the bird has flown. The bird here stands for Seth Govind Ram, of course. So he says the bird has flown. He's gone out away from there. Seth Govind Ram has left town. Definitely it means a collapse. And he feels that definitely now the bank is about to collapse. That is why the owner has also already left the place. I'll have the rest of my haircut another time. So he's so shocked that he says rest of my haircut, I'll do it, I'll have it another time. So imagine his condition. He even goes out with half the hair done. And then he dashed out of the shop. He ran out of the shop, making a beeline for his office and a checkbook. And straight away, making a beeline means going directly to his office so that he could get the checkbook there and he could get the money out of his bank. The news spread through the bazaar, and gradually and suddenly the news spread in the whole bazaar, from one shop to another, from one person to another, and with the rapidity of a forest fire. It spread as quick as a forest fire. The forest fires, they are known to spread very fast because of the trees nearby. So from the general store, it traveled to the tea shop, that circulated amongst the customers, and then spread and with them in various directions to the pan seller, the tailor, the fruit vendor, the jeweler, and the beggar sitting on the pavement. So everyone in the town, from the beggar to the jeweler to the fruit vendor, the tailor, everyone got the news, and it was obvious everyone was in a state of shock, and they wanted to naturally get their money out. So people started moving towards the bank to get their money out. Men stood in groups at street corners discussing the situation. So people started discussing the situation. This became the hot topic, and they came in groups to discuss the situation. The small town in the foothills seldom had a crisis. Seldom means rarely ever. The small town had faced such a crisis, such a bad situation, and never had floods, earthquakes, or drought. So no, nothing, no natural calamity had also hit this town. And so the imminent crash of the local bank set everyone talking. So it was obvious, the imminent crash, all of a sudden the crash of this bank, it became the hot topic, and everyone was talking about this only and speculating. So everyone was speculating, they were discussing they were guessing the causes, the effects of this collapse, what would happen later, and rushing about in a frenzy. And they were running here and there in a frenzy. In a frenzy means in a state of shock or excitement, because they wanted their money out. Okay, for today, I think this will be enough. The rest of the part of the chapter we'll take up in the second video. So children, go through this part of the chapter, at least read 2 times. And I hope the lesson was simple and enjoyable. Thank you and have a nice day.